Hey there guys, PC Guy here, and we're going to be taking a look today at GeForce Now. GeForce Now has been in beta since last year, and it has this week finally came out of beta, and it's a full-fledged launched product. I'm going to give you a little sum up, let's say, of what it is and comparisons with similar services. We're obviously going to try to test it afterwards, but as a quick roundup before we get into that, it is quite similar to Google Stadia if you have kept up with the launches. It's a game streaming service, means you don't have to actually have a good computer or a good console to run the games in decent settings, so it's supposed to help with that, and it's also supposed to let you play on other devices like tablets, smartphones, your smart TVs, and all that sort of stuff without having an actual game console or PC there. It is, like I said, similar to Google Stadia with some key improvements that make it look like a better choice if you are going through the choice of a gaming streaming. First of all, you don't have to own the games on GeForce Now. If you own them on Steam, Battle.net, you name it, you can play them through GeForce Now, while as with Stadia, you have to buy them specifically on Stadia, and they will only be yours to play on Stadia and not on any other platforms. So that alone there is a massive improvement. Let's say that Google discontinues Stadia, all your games are probably lost unless the developers actually choose to support you getting them on other platforms. With GeForce Now that doesn't matter, because if you bought it on Steam, it's on Steam, and you can play it on your PC as well as GeForce Now. So that alone already is a major improvement. Other improvements I will show you now on the website actually, before going and trying to test it. For starters, it is only available in the US and Europe as far as I know right now, and the site does provide you with quite a decent chunk of information. It has a few heads up of a few games that it supports right here. It doesn't support every game yet. However, it does advertise to support over 1,000 games right now from the get-go, which is a lot more than Stadia did back then. It has little C games, so you can actually check which games are supported. Let's take a look. And I wanted to try it on a couple of games that I own, for example, Witcher 3, let's say. You can just type it here. You can press search, and it tells you which games it supports or it doesn't. Nvidia Highlights is another feature that they advertise as being able to capture your best moments, so kind of like, you know, highlight reel of good plays that you make in some games if you are into that sort of stuff. And you have information about the membership options, as well as, well, a few more advertising things. As for the membership options, they are quite simple. You have a free option, which is standard access. You can play at most for 1 hour in one session. Then you have a Founders Edition, which gives you priority access because there is a limited amount of slots right now on their servers, I believe 600,000 or something like that. So there might be queues at certain points, and having a Founders Access will give you priority to skip the queue ahead of people that are on the free platform. You can play up to 6 hours as opposed to the 1 hour on the free. You can have RTX settings on, which apparently you cannot with the free membership, and you have basically a 90-day free introductory period, after which you'll pay $4.99 or pounds, and I believe it's €5.99 if you are in Europe. This alone already makes a big difference. Stadia was a lot more expensive to get into, and that's not even counting the price that you had to actually buy the games on the platform. Here, the cost of buying the games, if you already own them, is basically zero. If you don't, you will unlock them on every platform, plus the access to the platform can be free, and it can also cost you if you go for the Founders, but a lot less than Stadia was costing. Now, as for the difference in a bit more technical terms, it only allows you to play at 1080 60 FPS so far, as opposed to Stadia's 4K. However, it also requires a bandwidth of, they recommend a bandwidth of 50 Mbps if you are to play at 1080p 60. Stadia asked for less, but as we know, Stadia also had a lot of issues with their latency and that sort of thing, which we hope that Nvidia won't, but we will try to figure it out in our testing. Some complaints that I heard was that there was a bit of an issue in terms of like loading screens in certain games that took forever. We'll see if we run across any of that. and how well it actually works. I'm going to be doing this with the free edition, so I assume that's going to be what a lot of people out there will be using to try it out at first, so you'll be able to get a good first-hand experience. Let's take a look at how to actually join. You obviously will have to register with an account, or you can log in with a pre-existing account with Nvidia. It does not necessarily matter. After you've made an account, you can get to select which device you are going to be playing. It has a choice right now between Windows PC, Mac, Nvidia Shield TV, or Android if you are going to be playing on Android devices. I assume later on other choices will come, like for example iPhones and such, but for now let's try it on our Windows PC. After opening GeForce Now after its installation and logging in once again, let's click on Find and Add Your Games to see what we've got. As predicted, it asked us to log into Steam as long as the game launched. It took about, let's say, 2 minutes or so for the game to actually get a server slot and start running, so let's log in and see how it goes. After logging into Steam, you just literally open the Steam window in your GeForce Now window, which then you have to find the play button, hit it, and from here on it seems like it is about to install it again. It is getting installed on Nvidia's side and not some sort of weird bug, so I guess this is to be expected. The installation complete, let's launch the game and see how it actually runs. Seems to have kept the expansion packs that I had enabled, which is good. Let's see, it has also continued with the save games that I had on Steam, which is good, means you can carry on between multiple devices and in and outside of GeForce Now with the same save games, the same progress, so that much is pretty good. Let's see how it actually does in terms of actually playing. Loading times were pretty great. As far as how responsive it is, I gotta say it's looking pretty good. Actually cannot seem to bring up the overlay to actually check the FPS, but at first sight it does seem to be relatively good. I wouldn't say it definitely is not as good as if you were playing it on your PC. I'm not sure if you guys checked, but there was a little bit of choppiness when I spun the camera around relatively fast, so there is definitely some room for improvement, but keep in mind this is a streaming platform. It's also definitely not running at 60 FPS at most points, especially when turning the camera at a fast pace or looking at new areas that might not have been rendering. Definitely not looking all that hot. Let's look how it does on a little bit of a fight, which was not a very long one. I gotta say that the latency, the input lag is not crazy. It's actually pretty decent. However, it's definitely not running at 60 FPS as advertised. It might be running at 30, but I also have the feeling that sometimes it's running even lower than that. Not to spend all our time testing Witcher 3, I also wanted to test World of Warcraft, especially some of the, more World of Warcraft specific intricacies there. Let's cut our testing short and see how that works out. After stopping Witcher 3, I did get a little bit of a pop-up message from GeForce Now saying that the game might stutter or have a poor experience if my connection did not improve. This seems to suggest that they think the connection was the problem. However, being on 100 up, 100 down fiber optic connection, I don't think that's the issue. That's basically more than double of what they recommend. So yeah, I do think it's an issue with a bit of a streaming service, but let's see how it works with World of Warcraft. Loading speeds were definitely good, no complaints there. As you can see, if you have watched some of my other World of Warcraft videos, my UI looks completely different. That's because the add-ons that you can use to change how your UI looks, they are stored locally on your PC, so you will not be able to use add-ons with GeForce Now, which, if you are a serious WoW player in a bit more competitive content, is kind of a make or break thing, so I don't expect World of Warcraft to be very used in terms of competitive play with GeForce Now. In any case, let's look for ourselves for a fight and see how the game actually performs. Once again, I do not notice crazy issues with input lag. I cannot say that it feels very different than if I was playing on my own local installation. When performing some more sensitive abilities like displacement, speed boost, that sort of thing, it is a bit more noticeable, but it's nothing crazy, it's nothing unplayable, especially not in this type of game. It's comparable to, let's say that you're playing a game with 30, 40 ms. That's what you would compare this with. Still very playable, just not as, let's say, first world as we are used to. However, RPGs and MMOs don't really capture the difficulties that streaming game servers usually have. It's usually in the fast-paced things like FPS that it kind of struggles with input lag and latency. So let's see how it does on Overwatch. Just went to the practice range, not to disturb other people with my testing, but let's see how it actually works. First glance, the latency is not much of an issue. The input lag is manageable. Granted, I'm used to playing at 60 FPS on my screen. If you are used to, like, I don't know, 140, 240 FPS or hertz on your screen, it's definitely going to feel a lot different. This feels as well, like I mentioned in World of Warcraft, it feels like you are playing with like 20 ms or something, or 30 ms, where there is a slight amount of latency that you don't necessarily, does not hinder you in a situation like this where it's not super competitive. But however, if you are just, some person that has a low-end PC or just a console or an older console, and you just want to play on something, to play some games without actually having to heavily invest in a great PC, let's face it, if you're on a budget PC, you are probably going to have a similar experience to this. So yeah, there's definitely nothing to scoff at. Now that the playtesting is out of the way, let's see the settings that GeForce Now actually has. You can choose the server location that you're going to connect to. Obviously, this is going to affect your latency, input lag, and all that. I would suggest just leaving it on auto, and it will pick the closest and best. And it has a nice little test network for you to see how good your network actually does. You can change the streaming quality. It comes with the balanced one by default, with an auto max bitrate, 1920 x 1080p, so normal HD resolution, 60 fps, VSync, and adjustment for poor network qualities. You have a data saver option in case you are playing on a capped device with a data cap, and it will limit your resolution to 720p at 60 fps, which is, well, still playable if you're playing on a smaller screen. It has also a competitive setting with also 720p, but 120 fps. This is aimed mostly at things like shooters where the fps really matters. And then you have a custom resolution, which lets you adjust your settings, for example, a custom bitrate, custom resolution if you wish, still with the max being 1920 1200 for wider screens, but no higher than that, so no 1440p resolutions. So what is our opinion on GeForce Now? I do think it is an upgrade to Google Stadia, but still falls short on having your own machine. Performance-wise, having your own PC is always going to be better, at least in the foreseeable future, until the input lag issues are somehow resolved, which is difficult considering it's just a matter of the physical distance between where you are and the server. So it's always going to be more responsive if you have a machine right there and in your room. So that is difficult to fully fix. However, it does seem to be playable in most cases. If you're an extremely competitive player on a shooter game, you might notice a difference. However, if you are just a more casual gamer, which is the type of people that this is mostly aimed at, that you don't want to invest in the console, you don't want to invest in a good gaming PC, then this definitely seems like a good solution, and better on Google Stadia. The fact that if you own the games on a platform, you can play it on any platform and not alone on GeForce Now, that on its own makes this worth it, because if you don't use it much, if you don't want to use it anymore, then you have not sunk, how much was Stadia again? 129 for the controller, etc. With GeForce Now, it is basically free. You can play with the free settings for 1 hour at a time. If you want the premium settings, it costs you $4 or $5 a month. If you choose to cancel, you still keep the games on Steam, on Battle.net, on whatever else you had it. It's also very handy that the library is already over 1,000 games, which is a lot more than Stadia ever was. And you can easily check on the website if they are available on GeForce Now or not. Definitely impressed with GeForce Now's launch. They do seem to have a better feel for what gamers actually need and want than Google, which is not surprising considering Nvidia is one of the big names in gaming hardware. There are obviously still issues that need fixing, like as you saw in Witcher, it was not completely fluid. The game was not running at 60 FPS, that much is certain. There was parts where it looked like it was running at 15 tops, and it was not rendering things completely as swiftly as you would expect. First experience, definitely impressive. World of Warcraft is not going to be playable on GeForce Now. The game is so heavily relying on add-ons, even for the most basic of group content, that if you are doing anything other than just straight up leveling, it's not going to be playable on GeForce Now. It's not possible to have the add-ons there, so it's severely limited in its functionality in terms of add-on support. Overwatch felt okay. Like I mentioned, if you are used to high refresh rates, high responsiveness, you are going to notice a difference. However, if you just want to log in for half an hour and just shoot some people, then that is definitely very much doable on GeForce Now as well. It felt responsive enough. I noticed no lag spikes. The input lag was minimal. I wouldn't go play ranked games with it, but for a casual game, more than fine. So yeah, GeForce Now, definitely a good thing. I look forward to seeing it develop in the future. I wonder how it's going to be if they do choose to support higher resolutions, high refresh rates, that sort of thing. That was Stadia's downfall, if you ask me, but Nvidia is playing it careful with allowing only 1080p with 60 FPS as a cap. Hope this has been useful for you guys. Definitely was a good experience. It's definitely helpful that it's a free software, so that barrier of entering definitely makes it a lot easier than Stadia ever was, and might just help give it the popularity that it needs to become a thing, as opposed to Stadia, because anyone can go and try it out, and then if you do like it, you can always upgrade to the premium version to have a bit of a better usage. The queues were not crazy. I had to wait at most a minute or two to get access to a server, so that was definitely manageable as well. The loading times were decent. In all, it was a pretty decent experience, and hats off to Nvidia for managing to pull this one off in pretty much the right way, which Stadia didn't really manage. Drop a comment, let me know what you think of this, and if you think this is going to be useful or not, if you think this is going to be the future of gaming, or if we're going to keep using our own machines. Consider checking the rest of the channel and subscribing to letting us get the resources in the future to do more and better videos, and I hope I'll see you next time.